to consider when building a pond is, why do you want a pond? And there are 3 questions you need to ask yourself. Do you want a pond for the sound, because you get the beautiful trickling sound? Do you want it for the plants? Or do you want it for the koi fish, or smaller fish, any type of fish? Or do you want it for a combination of all 3 or 2 of them? Once you've determined that, then you can determine what type of pond you want. There's not a lot of difference between it, but there are some points that we need to discuss today. When you have decided that you want a pond for all 3 of the above, you want the water, you want the fish, and you want the plants, then you have a true water gardening pond. First thing to remember is put your first pond where you can put a second pond, because most ponds that you put in turn into your waterfall, and you will build a bigger pond because you will love this so much. The one thing that I have to emphasize, and I did a presentation last night and I told them that, and they said, no, you're supposed to tell us this is easy. No, nothing is easy. Having a pond is just like having another small child or a pet. It requires maintenance. You cannot put a pond in your yard and then call me and say, my water's green, I have algae, my plants are dying, my fish is dying. Because my first question back to you is going to be, what's your filtration system like? How often do you feed your fish? And are you messing with the water? You have to have a bit of maintenance. It's not as difficult as some other hobbies that you could have, but it does require some of your time. So commit your time first. When you decide where you want your pond, and it can be in your front or your backyard. Most people enjoy them in their backyard because you can sit on the patio and hear them. But you can also have it in your front yard to be more ornamental. When you decide where you want it, the most important thing to do is lay out. I would take a hose or a can of spray paint and lay out where you want your pond. Once you dig this hole, it's here forever. And you are not going to be able to move it like you do the living room couch and say, I don't like it there, I went a little bit over here. So live with it. Make this a decision that's going to take you a few days. Once you get your layout, look at it, set your patio furniture around, decide what you're going to like, then come in and dig your hole. Size of your pond depends strictly on you. There is no right or wrong size for a pond. Depth is a different thing. If you're going to have goldfish of sort and no koi fish, you can do 12 to 18 inches. If you're going to do koi fish, you need to do 18 to 20 to 24 inches. You can get 6 of us up here that have all had as many classes or more than I have, and will all vary in opinions on certain things. But it's just within inches. We have, and I say this with a grain of salt, rather mild winters in Ohio, other than this last one we just went through. So koi fish will just go to the bottom of the pond in the wintertime, as will any other fish. And they'll just kind of hover down there. So give them some place to go. So give them at least 12 to 24 inches. The more expensive fish you're going to put in, the deeper it needs to be, just because your larger, expensive koi fish are very good size, and they'll take up quite a bit of room. So all of that will predetermine how many gallons and how big your pond's going to be. Once you figure out this is where my pond is going to be, and you dig your hole, you can, and it recommends here that you have layers, and you can. That's a personal preference. I'll show you some ponds and I'll tell you about mine. My pond is pretty similar to this one at my home. I have a large skimmer box, which we'll touch on here in a little bit. Then I go into another round pond, which is quite deep. And then I go into my main pond, which is about 18 to 24 inches deep, and I have koi in it. My pond measures 800 gallons when you put the 3 components together. What you need to do to determine your liner, and we're always here to help you, as is any good aquatic store, will help you determine your liner size. The most important thing that I can tell you about the liner is live with it for 2 weeks before you cut it. Once you fill the water in that pond, that liner has to settle. Don't be impatient. Do not plan this 2 days before your daughter's high school graduation or your son's wedding. This is something that needs to be done ahead of time. Let that liner sit there looking ugly around the edges before you landscape around it until you know it's settled. Give it a good week. It will start to, you'll see it move a little if you put a marker on it. Once you're all done with that and you've lined it with all of your rocks, then you may cut your liner back so that you don't see it. But please, patience is very, very important, because there is nothing worse than cutting your liner beforehand, having it shrink down, and that's where your leak occurs. Leaks are very expensive. I would imagine every one of you are on city water. I can tell you that a leak can cost you $600 a month. Not a problem before you find it. Because unfortunately, you only get your water bill once a month. And when it goes from $300 to $600, you go, I think I have a leak. And I did. I had a bad iris. I had an iris that slipped under a liner and decided that she wanted dirt. And so she got dirt to the tune of $600. So we've decided, we recommend that you double line now. If you have to seam something like this, we have seam tape that we run here. We also recommend now that you put another piece of liner here, because if a plant doesn't get what it needs, it'll go after it. Trust me. And the root systems on them can get very large. You can put levels in your pond, or you can just put a hole in the ground. We also have preformed ponds that are already made for you that are a plastic. Don't overlook the preformed ponds. People go, it just looks like a kid's swimming pool that was painted black. Not necessarily. If you come down to the store, you can see we have 3 of them tiered, and we have them landscaped on the one side and not landscaped on the other, so you purposely can see this is what it looks like, but you can hide it with rocks and walls and foliage so that you won't have the problem of a liner. If you are alone, or if you're doing this on your own, this is something that you can handle yourself. You can dig this hole yourself. You can still have your water. If you want to get with the shelving and the layers, that's good too, because you have different types of plants, which we can touch on later. Different types of plants that need to go deep, like your cattails need to go as deep as possible, and your rushes to get your height. And then some of your other plants are just shelf plants, and you'll want to do that. So think about putting some layers in. There's a couple of different schools of thought as to underlayment. Once you have your hole, you can use an underlayment in this, or you can just put down a thin layer of sand, or you can use cardboard boxes, old carpet, or newspaper, very thick. The purpose for the underlayment is just as you're placing your liner, so that you don't have little sharp pebbles that stick up whenever you're walking in your liner. So an underlayment can be used, or it doesn't have to be used. Most important thing is the type of liner that you get. And that's all written on here also. You need a 45 mil, and it needs to be fish safe. It comes in different widths. We now have a new width out this year that is just 5.5 for those of you who want to do waterfalls. I've had a lot of people that have requested they want to start their pond here, end it here, and they want a waterfall, and they have to buy all this excessive liner, where now I have 5.5 foot wide, so that would make a nice little stream effect too, if you want a rock stream as opposed to an actual pond. Water gardens can be a lot of things. They don't have to just be a pond. You can have a stream from one point of a hill to another, just have a little trickling water, and there you go. And your plants would be maybe some hyacinths or just some throwaway plants, and then no fish. So that would be something if you have limited space. Once you get your liner in, then we do rocks. There's a second page, formulates how many rocks you need approximately. Again, nothing can be true on this. It'll give you an approximate what it covers, but I might like my rocks head to head. You might like 3 inches in between your rocks. So this is all approximate. What I tell people is, because we have no return policy at the store for cash. We will just give you in-store credit. We won't take your rocks back, so buy what you think you need and then come back and get some more. It's always better to do that. Rocks can be one of the more expensive parts to a pond. Rocks are only 10 cents a pound, but it takes a lot of pounds to get a pond. I am a firm believer every pond I have is a rock bottom pond. Again, no matter who you talk to, you'll get a difference of opinion. Koi eat their own, and so in doing so, in order to protect them, I put rocks on the bottom of my pond, one to help with filtration, but more importantly to give my babies a place to hide, because you will be surprised. They'll come up. My babies, when I see them, are already this long. I don't see any little ones because they're already down there hiding, eating away, having a wonderful time, and then they come up and go, yeah, you didn't get me. So it's pretty cool. I don't feel that a rock bottom pond requires any more maintenance than any other pond. Plus I feel it's more attractive because you don't see that black liner with the green algae slime. Let's talk about algae a little bit. I went to a seminar. I've been very fortunate to be able to go to a national seminar for a number of years and have met some wonderful people that have been in the business forever. And the one lady stood up and she just yelled once. She said, "Algae is our friend." And we all went, "Sit down." And she said, "No, think about it. We fight algae with ponds so much, and we're going to have a tremendous algae bloom here as soon as we warm up in a week or two." String algae is there. It's there 365 days a year. This winter didn't bother that string algae at all. It's just sitting there dormant. And the hotter the sun gets, the more it spreads its little arms out and says, "Here I am." We have 2 products that we have used successfully for 3 years in our store to control string algae, and we'll be glad to talk to you about those. I'm a firm believer, no matter where you get it, hang some barley straw, and unfortunately it should have been hung about 2 to 3 weeks ago. Barley takes 1 month to activate, so get it in as soon as you can. It's too cold right now to put any other additives in your pond to control algae or anything else, but barley can go in. Actually, it could have gone in February if we didn't have ice on our ponds. So, but we put it in March and we're good to go. You do want to maintain a small level of string algae and any type of algae in your pond, but you do not want the algae where you cannot see your fish. The only absolute positive cure for algae is to tint your pond. I have a little problem with tinting your pond because why did you go to all that trouble to tint your pond and pay all that money for fish and only be able to see them whenever their little mouths come up to eat once a day? Which brings me to another point. What did I just say? How often do you feed your fish? Once a day. Preferably the same time every day. They will look hungry all the time. So do your children and grandchildren when they go to the grocery. You've just fed them, but by God, when they see that candy aisle, they've got to have something. They're starving. So are your fish. Your fish will eat 24/7 if you let them, and then they'll get diseased. So please, if you're going to do fish, do yourself and them a favor once a day. Now, if you'd like to spoil your fish, speaking as a grandmother, I can tell you that you are allowed to spoil things. There is a product on the market called koi cookies, or you can make your own treats for your fish. First of all, they love vegetables, so you can throw them in some, like if you have some broccoli or something that somebody didn't clean their plate, you can throw them in some broccoli. They love watermelon. A really fun thing to do, especially if you have small people at your house, is you can take some Knox gelatin in an old ice cube tray, or a new one, and freeze some of your leftover vegetables from your dinner in the Knox gelatin, and then just whenever it's really hot, take them out and throw them in Knox gelatin, and they'll love to pick at it. So they do like that, and those are treats that you can give your fish, and I'll let you give them that anytime you want. But food once a day. I don't care whose food you use, but please be sure that corn is the 3rd ingredient on the back, or behind 3rd. Not 1 or 2, at least 3rd, preferably 4th. Corn will just fatten. It's no different than it does for cows and pigs and everything else. Corn will fatten your fish. You do not want fat fish. You want healthy fish. When your water temperature gets to be 50 degrees for about 3 or 4 days in a row, feed them medicated food for 2 weeks. After that, you can feed them their regular food. In the winter time, you do the same thing. Come October, when the nights start getting cold, feed them medicated food for 2 weeks and then do not feed them. Let me repeat that. Do not feed your fish. October, latter part of October, November, December, January, February, March, maybe all of April. Do not feed your fish. They will get diseased. The first year I didn't listen to that, and I lost 5 koi fish that were this big. And I inoculated the other 10, I saved them. I gave them shots twice a day for 2 weeks. But I saved them. I had a black fish that turned white. He was coal black. He was as black as your sweater. He was as white as that chair. And it looked like a tube of toothpaste whenever I touched it. And the first 3 or 4 days, it was so lethargic it just laid in my hands. And then it took 3 of us by the end of the 2 weeks to hold that fish down to inoculate it. I can help you with your fish. I've had a couple of classes. I will not take any responsibility, and I will not inoculate because I am not a vet. I can do my own just because I have some classes, but I'm not legal to do anyone else's. But I can put them in quarantine for you if you would like that. I've done that for people, but it's just catches as catch can. But the great thing is, last year I took a fish in, and I had a gentleman come in two days ago, and he told me, he said that's the healthiest fish he has in his pond. So it makes you feel kind of good. I mean, I get very attached to my fish. No, I do not name them because not that attached to them. I know better. Things happen. Which is something else we should talk about, predators. Up until last year, in our area, we did not have blue heron. We now have a blue heron. Once a blue heron comes, it stays. Blue herons are very vain animals, so the best thing to do for a blue heron is circle your pond with some fishing wire. If a blue heron trips, whether anyone sees it or not, it embarrasses it for some reason. Don't ask me, I don't know. But I'm just telling you this works. They won't come back because they're embarrassed. You know they're endangered, so we can't do anything nasty to them, and we wouldn't want to do anything nasty to blue herons. So you can take the balloons, the little mylar balloons that you buy, and decorate your pond with those. And your neighbors will think you're a little strange, but it keeps away the blue heron. There are other, if you put another bird in your pond, they won't come because apparently they don't socialize well. I don't know, but I know these things work. I had a blue heron scoop down and eat a $300 koi fish. Why he picked the $300 one whenever there were some $20 ones laying right beside it, I don't know, but it happened. So, and he jumped the fence. He jumped a 10-foot fence and just, well, he flew, I guess, and just popped down and ate it and was gone. So be careful of the blue herons. Raccoons love fish. They just love them. Deer just like to come in and drink the water and scare the fish. So depending on where you live, I live on the corner of Alex Bell and Mad River, and you wouldn't think that but I have every one of those animals that I've just mentioned to you in my yard. So watch out for predators. Think about that when you're positioning your pond. You don't want it under trees because it's very hard to maintain it in the fall whenever the leaves drop. You want it in the sun as much as possible, and you also don't want it tucked back in like a wooded area that you have, so it's just kind of like a smorgasbord for the rest of the animals. We've talked about green water, and we've talked about some chemicals that we can put in. The most important thing that you can do for your pond, and the nicest thing that you can do, is take and get 50 to 75% coverage with aquatic plants. Lilies, of course, are the most beautiful. They spread, they flower, and they're relatively easy to maintain. You get a lily the first year, and if you can get fortunate enough to get one that's blooming, put the lily in and fertilize it a couple of times during the year. And I sell lilies in gallon pots. You probably won't have to split a lily for 2 to 3 years. And then at 2 to 3 years, you split it just like you split anything else that's a root plant. If you're a gardener, you know you just take a knife and just hack it and put 2 of them in with some fertilizer. We have water gardening soil, or you can use kitty litter, and there you go. You're up and running. You have now you have 2 lilies, or 3 or 4, or as many as you want to get. Your other plants that we touched about earlier, you'll want, cattails are very invasive. That's why you see them on swamps all the time and alongside the road. But if you can put them in an area where they're contained, so you're thinking about your pond. I keep my cattails up in my skimmer box, so they give height for the back of my pond. They don't get anywhere else. They're just contained up there. I don't let them down where the liner is. Rushes are very pretty. We have a lot of other plants that have color and foliage for them. The one thing that you're going to want to get, that you're going to want to invest, it's like the petunias for the water garden. That would be your anacharis and your kabamba. Anything that is submersible, it goes to the bottom, and it helps give oxygen to your fish and to the water. Then you'll want to get your floaters on top, which are your hyacinth and your water lettuce. Last year, some of our hyacinth had root systems like this. This is wonderful because the fish come and pick at it. It helps them get some green vegetation, and also as your water's flowing, it aerates the water. So you'll definitely want some of those. The other plants are no different than your garden. They're personal preference. They're just there. Lilies are for coverage. Everything else is just for height. You'll want irises because they're so absolutely beautiful, but they're no different than your regular irises. You get a few good days, but then you have the nice green foliage afterwards. But there is a difference between a water iris and a regular iris. So you'll need to get aquatic irises. The next couple of pages of the handout tell you different things about bubbler systems, maintenance and everything. But let's get back to building our pond. I diverted a little bit. Once you have it dug and you have your liner in and you put your rocks in, then you have to have some sort of a filtration and pump system. Your fish need to have fresh oxygen pumped in. If you choose to keep your pond running all year, you can do that. There isn't a problem. Your fish, as I said, will just go to the bottom. All you need to do is keep your pump running or your waterfall running so that you have a small hole open. You cannot have your whole pond ice over. If it ices over, you will lose your fish because they definitely will suffocate. If you are away and it has iced over and you're trying to get the hole back in, do not crack it with a hammer or anything like that because there will be a fish there, I guarantee you, trying to get air, and you'll eliminate that fish very quickly. Take a pot and with some hot water in it, just keep putting hot water in it until you create a circle, melt a circle in the ice. Pumps and filtration systems are a whole nother 3-hour conversation. That's all personal preference. I will just tell you that it is needed. You can get pumps that have small filters on them, and then you can just continually add to your filtration system. So you have your pump in, you have your filters in, you have your liner in, you have your rocks in, you have a pond. And I'll show you a couple of different. This was my pond in front when we first did it, in front of the building when we first did it. This is my pond that I was telling you about that is the preformed liner. And you can see the preformed liner on this side, and on this side we have the rocks, the walls the rock walls so that you can't see. This is my pond in the front. About 2 years ago, this picture was taken, and I had some lilies, but not as much coverage as I have now. And these are my babies. This is my pond out front, has 2 large waterfalls. It spills down, and then it spills into a large horseshoe. You can get them to eat out of your hand. If you feed them the same time every day at the same location, they will come to you. They know that you are the person that is taking care of them, and you can get them to eat out of your hand. My boss has a horseshoe-shaped pond, and I will walk to this part of his pond with nothing in my hand, and then I'll walk here, and they follow me like little children. They just come walking to me. Mine, I think it's because they know me, but I'm sure they're just looking for food, but I like to think it's because I took care of them. But when I walk up to the pond, they all will come to the pond, and it's just the greatest thing in the world is to see all these beautiful fish come up to you, and it's real satisfying. They don't talk back or anything. They're pretty cool. Basically, it sounds simple. You dig a hole, you put in a liner, you put some rocks, you put a pump in, water, fish, plants, and it makes so much enjoyment. You cannot imagine. It's like everything else. It sounds simple, but it is work. So how am I doing on time? I probably need to ask you right now if there are any questions, and especially those of you who already have established ponds. I know if I haven't answered the questions, I know there were a few people, and I asked them to please wait. And then, like I said, I'll talk to you about some of the new things that you need to have in your garden this year. So, does anyone have? Yes, excellent question. Homeowners insurance to have a pond in your backyard. First of all, you need to talk to any one of your. I'm sorry, I'm from Chicago. I'm still not used to the word that you all have townships here. Townships, to see if you need a permit to put that in. And then they'll tell you any restrictions as far as fences or homeowners insurance. I'm highly covered at the store with insurance. At my house, I did not have to say anything to my insurance agent. But I live in a bit of a private addition, so I don't have to have fencing or anything else on mine. So that would be your individual. I would talk to your insurance man and ask him, depending on to where you're located. I mean, like, my backyard is very secluded. Nobody comes back. If you're going to put it somewhere where it's a traffic pattern, you know, in a neighborhood or something like that, you might want to for your own protection. I know I have to for my hot tubs. The width for the liners, I started to say that. I said 5.5, and I got so excited about that. 10, 20, and 30. And then I get them in 100-foot lengths, and so you can get any length you want once you've established your width. And I sell my liner for $1 a square foot. You'll be able to find it cheaper on the internet, but remember, liner is very heavy, and you'll have to pay the freight. So I'm about where everybody else is because of the fact that mine's fish safe and it's 45 mil. The question was, do water hyacinth coverage keep the string algae at bay? It depends on how many you put in. You could, in lieu of lilies, if you had a small enough pond, you could probably do enough coverage, and that would help with the string algae, help with the shade for your koi fish with hyacinths, because I've seen hyacinths get this big with the foliage on them. So last year was an excellent year for hyacinths. I have no idea what it'll be like this year, but it's worth a try. It's worth a try. Why cut your liner? Why not fold it back and put rocks around it? One, it depends on how much extra you have. You might have too much thickness, and mostly it's just looks. Most people don't want to see the liner. Some of my liner is visible at my house, and I don't mind it just because I'm hoping someday that I learn to be a gardener and I cover all that stuff up with really nice plants. You notice I can't even name a plant, so we're in a lot of trouble, aren't we? she remarked, as I did earlier, that algae is 24/7, 365. Like I said, it's always growing. She now has algae on the rocks in the bottom of her pond and on the side of her pond, and she asked, should she drain it, or is there anything else she can do? First of all, never drain your pond 100% unless you have a major leak or a major disease. Only take your water down some. I would take my water down about half, and then I would take a soft brush and scrub and get it all loose. If you can, quarantine your fish. Take them out. This would be a really good time to do it while they're still a little lethargic. Quarantine and put them in a tub. Please, please, please put a pump in that tub. And I'm not being sarcastic. I'm just saying I've had people tell me that they've quarantined their fish and they've all died, but they forgot to put a pump in for them. No, they can't breathe for any period of time without oxygen in there. I mean, maybe 15 or 30 minutes while you transport them, but they need to have a pump going. So that's what I would do, is I take mine down about 3/4 of the way, scrub that algae, let my filter run for a day or two, and then pop the fish back in, and you'll be good to go. You do not want to kill that established bacteria that you have in there. And if your pond is mature enough to have that much algae, you have a good bacteria flow. So that's what I do. He's made a statement that he has a number of ponds. See, what did I tell you? He started out with the pond, and now look, he's got 2 or 3 already. And he has now done, his last pond is a level pond, so that he has the ability to do, just as I said, to quarantine without taking the fish out. He can kind of, if I'm visioning this in my mind, you can kind of put all your fish in one area and restrict them, as I could. On my personal pond, I could harvest all my fish from the bottom and put them in the top and shut off my my waterfall, just leave my pump run, and I could clean the bottom of my pond if I need to. Very good point. So level ponds help. It's just a lot of times people don't want to start out on a level pond. I get them too nervous whenever I tell them you have to do this and you have to put these levels in and everything, and they just don't want to dig a hole. You know, just want to dig a nice little hole, put a liner in, and you're good to go. Okay, let's do that one first. She has a preformed pond that she believes has a leak in it, and she wants to know if there is anything she can do. Yes, you can drain it down. Let me tell you a little secret. If you think you have a leak, take a squirt bottle and put whole milk in it. Circle your pond, the diameter of your pond. The whole milk will run to the leak. It's, again, you know, it's that heron thing. I don't know why, but I just know that these things work. Yeah, just squirt it around like ketchup. Squirt it around, and it will go to the leak. Then you'll know where your leak is. Other thing, too, is just keep draining it down a little bit till you find your leak. If you know where your hole is, yes, we have double-sided seam tape that you can put another piece of liner on, and we can save that. Worst possible scenario is put a liner on it. You already have the preformed pond, and it's already dug. Take it all out. Line it. The milk does not do anything to the water, doesn't do anything to the fish. It just dissipates. It'll just run through your filtration system, and it's no problem. If it's too deep, I just know that it runs to wherever the hole is, and then you at least have that area that you can work with, as opposed to, I mean, my one pond is 8,000 gallons, so if anything goes wrong with it, I just kind of like, I just panic. The $4,000 gallon pond was the one that cost me the $600. So she's having dirt and problems in her pond each year. First of all, do you cover your pond in the fall with the netting so that you don't get a lot of debris? Okay. We have inexpensive netting that you can buy, and you can put it down, and it'll catch most of your leaves and things like this. I don't know where your pond is located, but if you have a lot of trees and everything by it, you're probably getting a lot of droppings. I don't know what kind of filtration system you have. I need to know what kind of filtration system you have. You might not have enough. You might not be filtering enough. You might not be cleaning it. Yes, people, if you have filters, you have to clean them. A lot of people think, we've got a filtration system, we're good to go. No, you have to clean it. My filters are cleaned twice a day. At my house, they're cleaned about twice a week. So a lot heavier maintenance at the store, of course, but my pond at home looks just as good as the ponds at the store. It takes 3 years for a pond to get totally established, too, till you get that echo balance that is absolutely perfect. So remember, we used the word patience at the beginning. We have to be patient with this. But I will help you one-on-one if you want me to, because I'd have to ask you a lot more questions. Okay? She's a condo person. She can't dig a hole, or for apartment people that can't do this. There are a number of things you can do. You can have container gardens. Anything that doesn't have a hole in it can be a pond. And if it has a hole in it, plug it up with some silicone and put a liner on it, and you're good to go. You can put a small pump in it, so you can still have that. You can stack two beside one another so that you can still have a small waterfall, or you can just simply float a hyacinth in it and put a little baby bubbler pump in it and float a goldfish, and you have a pond. Yep. You need the pump, and if you don't want to put fish in it and you don't mind cleaning it out every week or two, you can just put flowers in a pot and have a container garden, but I wouldn't recommend it without the fish. She asked about what type of containers you can use. I sell a simple black container that has a lip. It's just, and then I sell Vietnamese pottery jars that are about this big and this tall that are just absolutely exquisite. They're glazed and they're just beautiful. So you can go from $30 to $300. Anything, as long as it doesn't have a hole. I have a lot of things coming in for condo dwellers or for people with limited space. I have some waterfalls coming in from Texas. They should be here this week, and they are absolutely beautiful. They sit in corners or they sit by themselves, and they look just like a rock garden, and they're great. And they have a large enough pool that you could house some small fish in. I wouldn't recommend wintering them over. I would take them in, so I'd get an inexpensive fish so that you can take it in or donate it to a school or bring it up here to the pond or something like this. What is the lifespan of water plants? Your anacharis, kabamba, and things like that, petunias, they're out of there at the end of the year, or else, that's another thing, if you don't clean those out, they will cause decay and cause problems. Water hyacinth and lettuce, out of there. We've tried bringing them in. I have long glass pitchers that sit on in a wrought iron thing, and that looks absolutely beautiful with some marbles in the bottom and a water hyacinth, because you see all the root system of the water hyacinth lasts about 2 weeks into November, and then you're done. Lilies and anything else, I don't sell throwaway plants. I sell plants that will come back year after year after year. So forever. She's talking about separating her plants because she puts them in pots. The plants that you'll purchase from 99% of the people will come in a plastic pot, just like your regular garden pots. Eventually, they'll split themselves because they will get so root bound that they'll split themselves. There's a new pot on the market. It's a cloth pot, and it's like a felt, but it's water resistant. You fold it over, and then you put some rocks in it. You put your kitty litter or your water gardening soil, fold it over, put some rocks on it, and in years, it just kind of goes away. And so you can pull your plant back out and change it, but it kind of grows with your plant, and then it doesn't get those sharp edges for the fish on it and everything else. It's a little bit more water safe, but the problem with the plants are in October, you need to take all your plants that you're saving, and you need to cut them right at the top of the rim of the container, and you need to drop them in the water. Then when you bring them up in the spring, and like she stated, that's not an easy thing to do, but bring them up in the spring, and you'll be able to tell if you need to transplant them or not, because they're going to be busting out. I have irises that the pot started out this big, and it got to be this big. I mean, the pot was still there, but the roots of the irises were just all coming out, and then you need to split them. And it's a hard task to do. You need to keep on it, look at them. If you think that it's marginal in the springtime, then I'd pull it up in July and maybe try to separated in July before you have to do it again, and it gets a whole other 6 months of growth on it. We're here to work with you, to help you, and I appreciate this time. And if there aren't any more questions, I think you get free things now.
You all help me thank Pat for the wonderful.
Thank you.